They called her the Hollow Wolf. For 8 years, Ember Ashwood had lived a lie so complete that even her own heartbeat believed it. She scrubbed their floors. She swallowed their insults. She let them believe she was broken. A wolfless Omega cursed by the moon goddess herself. But Ember was not empty. She was a vault. And inside that vault prowled a beast so ancient, so terrifying, that her dying mother had made her swear to never let it out. "Hide it," her mother had whispered, with her last breath flames consuming the cottage around them. "They will come for you if they know." So Ember hid. She starved her wolf. She buried her power so deep that some days she almost forgot it existed. She became invisible. A ghost in servants' gray, moving through the black pine pack house like smoke seen but never noticed, present but never acknowledged. Until the night the blizzard came. Until the night she saved a dying king. Until everything shattered. The servant quarters of Black Pine Pack House smelled of mildew and desperation. Ember woke at 4:47 in the morning, same as she always did. Her body knew the rhythm even before her mind surfaced from whatever thin dreams managed to find her on the narrow cot. The blanket was threadbare, doing little against the January cold that seeped through the cracked walls like an intruder with patience. She was 20 years old, though most days she felt ancient. Outside, the wind howled. Not the ordinary winter wind of the Wyoming mountains, but something darker. Something hungry. The kind of wind that killed. Ember dressed quickly in the gray uniform of the household staff, a shapeless tunic that hung off her narrow frame like a shroud. The fabric was rough against her skin, a constant reminder of her place in the hierarchy. She caught her reflection in the warped tin mirror nailed to the wall. Pale, gaunt, forgettable. Good. Invisible was safe. She made her way down the back staircase, keeping her footsteps silent. Years of practice had taught her which boards creaked, which shadows offered the best cover. The main house was beginning to stir. She could hear the cooks clattering pots in the kitchen. 3 floors down, the distant rumble of guards changing shifts at the front gate. The Ember Moon Gala was tonight. The entire territory was preparing. Ember slipped into the east corridor, bucket and scrub brush in hand. If she could finish the throne room before the family woke, she might avoid Sienna Vale for another day. Small mercies were all she had left. She didn't get her wish. Well, well, the voice slithered down the hallway like oil on water. The ghost girl rises. Ember's stomach clenched. She kept her eyes on the marble tiles beneath her feet, studying the veins of gray and white like they held secrets worth dying for. Sienna Vale emerged from the shadows, flanked by 2 Omega girls who had long ago learned that siding with the bully was safer than becoming the target. Sienna was the beta's only daughter, a willowy brunette with sharp cheekbones and sharper cruelty. She wore a silk robe that cost more than Ember would earn in a decade, even if they actually paid her. They didn't. "I asked the kitchens to send breakfast to my room an hour ago," Sienna said, stopping directly in front of Ember, forcing her to halt. "It never arrived." "I'm not assigned to the kitchens," Ember said quietly, her gaze still lowered. "I clean the east wing." "Are you talking back to me?" "No, beta Sienna. I was only—" The slap came fast. Ember's head snapped to the side, her cheeks stinging with the imprint of Sienna's palm. She tasted copper where her teeth had cut the inside of her lip. Deep inside, something stirred. A rumble echoed in the darkness of her chest, ancient and furious, a sound like continents grinding together, like the earth remembering it was once molten. Ember crushed it instantly, shoving it back into the vault with practiced precision. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The counting helped. It always helped. "Look at me when I speak to you," Sienna hissed. Ember raised her eyes. She made them empty, made them dull, made them the eyes of a girl with no wolf and no fight left. It wasn't hard. She'd been practicing for 2,847 days. That's how long it had been since her mother died, since the night the flames took everything, since the night Ember locked the beast away and swore to never let it breathe again. Sienna smiled, satisfied by what she saw or didn't see in Ember's gaze. "Better. Now, since you clearly have nothing useful to do, you can clean my chambers. I had a guest last night." She leaned closer, her breath warm against Ember's bruised cheek. "It's quite the mess." The 2 Omega girls giggled, the sound like breaking glass. Ember nodded once. "Yes, beta Sienna." Sienna flicked her fingers in dismissal and sauntered off, her entourage trailing behind like remoras following a shark. Ember waited until their footsteps faded. Then she waited 30 seconds more. Only when she was certain she was alone did she release the breath she'd been holding. Her hands were trembling. Not from fear, from the effort of keeping the beast caged. She looked down at her palms, rough, calloused, scarred from years of lye soap and boiling water and winters that bit deep. These hands had scrubbed 1,000 floors, had carried buckets that weighed more than she did, had touched nothing soft, nothing kind for so long that she sometimes wondered if she'd recognize gentleness if it found her. The silver wolf in her chest snarled. Ember shoved it down harder. Soon, she whispered to the empty hallway, just a little longer. But even she didn't know what she was waiting for. The blizzard came at noon. Ember was in the courtyard when the first flakes fell fat and heavy, like pieces of the sky giving up and falling to earth. Within minutes, the world turned white. Visibility dropped to 10 feet, then 5, then nothing but a wall of swirling snow that swallowed sound and sight and sense. The temperature plummeted, negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, then negative 45. Ember should have gone inside, should have sought shelter with the other servants huddled around the kitchen fires waiting for the storm to pass. But Sienna had other plans. You missed a spot, she said, appearing like a demon summoned by spite. She pointed to the courtyard stones already buried under 3 inches of fresh snow. Clean it, now. Ember stared at the bucket of freezing water in Sienna's hand, stared at the scrub brush being thrust toward her, stared at the beta's daughter's face twisted with a cruelty so casual it didn't even recognize itself as evil. It's negative 45 degrees. Ember said the words coming out before she could stop them. Are you refusing my... I'll freeze. Then scrub faster. Sienna dumped the bucket of water across the stones. It began to freeze on contact, forming a slick layer of ice that would make the courtyard treacherous by evening, right before hundreds of guests arrived for the gala. Clean it, Sienna repeated, and don't come inside until every stone is spotless. She left. The 2 Omega girls didn't even look back. Ember stood in the courtyard snow already accumulating on her shoulders, her thin servant's dress doing nothing against the wind. She had no coat, no gloves, no hope that anyone would notice she was missing until morning if then. She knelt on the frozen stones. The cold bit through her dress, immediately sinking teeth into her knees, her shins every point of contact. Her hands turned red, then white, then started to go numb as she scrubbed. 1 stone, 2 stones, 3 stones. The wind shrieked. Snow piled higher. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore. This is how I die, she thought distantly. Frozen in a courtyard, scrubbing stones no one will ever see. That's when she heard it. A sound beneath the wind, beneath the howling storm. A whimper. Ember's head snapped up. Her senses sharper than any wolfless Omega had a right to possess, locked onto the direction. Northwest. Maybe 200 yards into the tree line that bordered the packhouse grounds. Something was dying out there. She should ignore it, should keep scrubbing, should survive the night and count it a victory. But Ember Ashwood had learned a long time ago that she was spectacularly bad at doing what she should. She stood her knees screaming in protest, dropped the brush, and walked toward the sound. The forest swallowed her in 20 steps. The snow was waist deep in the trees. Ember pushed through it, her dress soaked her body, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. She couldn't feel her feet, couldn't feel her hands. The cold had stopped hurting and started just existing, a state of being rather than a sensation. Hypothermia. Some distant part of her medical knowledge whispered, "You have maybe 30 minutes before shutdown." She ignored it. The whimper came again, closer now. Ember stumbled over a buried root, caught herself against a pine trunk, kept moving. And then she saw him. The wolf. He was massive, easily 400 pounds of muscle and fur and fading life. His coat was midnight black, so dark it seemed to absorb the white around him, creating a void in the shape of a predator. But he wasn't hunting now. He was dying. A silver arrow protruded from his left shoulder, buried deep. The metal gleamed even in the storm's half-light, and Ember knew what it meant. Silver didn't just wound shifters, it poisoned them. The wolf's golden eyes found hers. Even through the pain, even through the death creeping into his veins, those eyes were aware. Intelligent. Ancient. He tried to growl a warning to stay back. It came out as a wheeze. Ember knelt beside him, snow soaking through her dress until she couldn't tell where the cold ended and her body began. She reached for the arrow. The wolf snapped at her fangs, coming within an inch of her throat. "I'm trying to help," she said. Her voice was steady. Strange that. Everything else was shaking, but her voice held firm. "You'll die if I don't get this out." The wolf stared at her. Something passed behind those golden eyes, calculation maybe. Or resignation. He lowered his head. Ember gripped the arrow shaft. The silver burned her palm, immediately blistering the skin. She ignored it, counted to 3 in her head. Pulled. The wolf's howl shattered the storm. The arrow came free, trailing black blood that steamed when it hit the snow. Ember threw it aside, pressing her hands against the wound to staunch the bleeding. The wolf thrashed, once his body convulsing. And then for just a moment, he wasn't a wolf anymore. The shift was involuntary, pain-driven. Ember caught a glimpse of a human arm, broad and scarred, before the wolf form snapped back into place. But she'd seen enough. This wasn't just any wolf. This was a shifter, and a powerful one. The wolf's breathing was shallow, rapid. His eyes were starting to glaze. The silver was in his bloodstream, now spreading. Ember looked back toward the pack house. She could barely see the lights through the storm. It was 1.2 miles. She'd measured it once years ago when she'd first learned the territory. 1.2 miles through waist-deep snow in a blizzard at negative 45 degrees, dragging a 400-pound wolf. She would die attempting it, probably. Okay, she said, to herself or to him or to whatever God-watched fools make fatal choices. Okay. She stood, her legs nearly giving out, staggered back to where she'd come from, following her own rapidly disappearing footprints. Found what she was looking for 10 yards back, a fallen branch thick and long enough. She dragged it back to the wolf. Then she took off her belt, the only piece of leather she owned, and fashioned a crude harness, looping it around the wolf's chest and tying it to the branch. The wolf watched her with those fading golden eyes. "This is going to hurt," she told him. "I'm sorry." She gripped the branch with both hands and pulled. The wolf was a dead weight of muscle and fur and dying warmth. Ember's feet slipped in the snow. She fell, got up, pulled again. Her shoulders screamed. Her hands, already numb, lost all feeling entirely. She pulled. 1 foot, 2 feet, 5 feet. The pack house was 6,336 feet away. Ember pulled. The storm raged. The wind tried to knock her down, tried to bury them both. Snow piled on her shoulders and her hair against her eyelashes until she had to keep blinking to see. She pulled. Her body stopped shivering. That was bad. She knew that was bad. The shivering was her body's attempt to generate heat. When it stopped, it meant the core temperature was dropping. Meant the shutdown was starting. She pulled. Somewhere around the halfway point, she started talking. Not to the wolf, he'd gone unconscious 300 yards back. To herself, to stay awake. "My mother's name was Luna," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Luna Ashwood. She taught me about herbs, about healing. She said every plant has a purpose, even the poisonous ones. Especially the poisonous ones." Pull. "She died when I was 12. Fire. The whole cottage went up. They said it was an accident. Knocked over a lamp." Pull. "But I saw them. Through the smoke. 3 wolves, not rogues. Order." Pull. "She made me promise before the flames took her. Made me promise to hide. To never show them what I was." Pull. "I've kept that promise for 2,847 days." Pull. "But I think I'm going to break it soon." The pack house materialized through the white like a fortress emerging from fog. But Ember didn't go to the main building. She went around back to the servants' quarters, to the smallest building farthest from everything else. Her shack. 8 feet by 10 feet. 1 cot. 1 fireplace. 1 window with no glass, just shutters that never quite closed all the way. Home. She dragged the wolf inside her arms, giving out the moment they crossed the threshold. She collapsed beside him, chest heaving, body racked with shivers that had started again, a good sign maybe. The wolf was barely breathing. Ember forced herself up. Her fingers were blue-white, useless. She fumbled with the flint, dropped it twice, finally got a spark. The kindling caught. Within minutes, she had a fire going. She turned to the wolf. The arrow was out, but the wound was still leaking that black poison blood. Silver didn't just damage tissue. It corrupted it, turned the body against itself. Ember had 17 minutes of medical training, all of it from her mother, all of it focused on herbs and field medicine. But she knew poisons, knew how to draw them out. She stumbled to the corner where she kept her small collection of dried plants, contraband technically. Servants weren't supposed to have anything of their own. But Ember had learned to hide things well. Winter's moss, silver sage, devil's claw. She mixed them with water from her drinking bucket, heating the mixture over the fire until it formed a thick paste. Then she packed it into the wound, her damaged fingers working by memory rather than sensation. The wolf convulsed once. Ember held him down, all 400 pounds of him, with a strength that surprised even her. "Don't you die," she said. "I didn't drag you through hell for you to die in my shack." She found her sewing kit, 3 needles, a spool of thread meant for mending her uniform. The needle was too small for this kind of work, but it was all she had. 17 stitches. She counted each one, her vision blurring from exhaustion and cold, and the way her hands shook. 17 stitches to close a wound that needed 40, but it would have to be enough. When she finished, she wrapped the wound with strips torn from her blanket, the only blanket she owned. Then she built up the fire until the small room was almost warm. Almost. The wolf's breathing steadied, not strong but steady. Ember sat with her back against the wall watching him. Her wet dress clung to her skin, leaching away what little warmth the fire provided. She should change, should take care of herself. But she couldn't move. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving behind only the cold and the pain and the realization of what she'd done. She'd saved a shifter, a powerful one judging by his size, and when he woke he would either thank her or kill her, and she wasn't sure which outcome frightened her more. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside, Ember counted to 5 over and over until exhaustion dragged her under. She woke to silence. The storm had passed. Gray morning light filtered through the gaps in the shutters, painting the small room in shades of ash and shadow. The wolf was gone. In his place on her narrow cot lay a man. Ember scrambled backward, her back hitting the wall hard enough to rattle her teeth. Her heart hammered against her ribs, and deep inside the silver beast woke with a snarl. The man didn't move. He was massive, even in human form, easily 6.5 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the weak sunlight. His black hair was tangled, falling past his jaw. His chest was bare, covered in scars that mapped a history of violence. Some were old, white lines that had faded with time. Others were newer, still pink and raised. The bandage Ember had wrapped around his shoulder was soaked through with blood and black ichor, but the bleeding had stopped. He was alive. And he was beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful, all sharp angles and contained power and the promise of destruction. Ember's breath caught. The man's eyes opened. Gold. Molten gold, like the heart of a star, like honey held up to sunlight, like every warning her mother had ever given her about things too bright to touch. Those eyes found hers and locked on. The world stopped. Ember felt it like a physical force, a snap, a click, a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. Something ancient and immutable and absolute slammed into place between them. The silver wolf in her chest threw itself against the vault door with a howl that shook her bones. Mine, it snarled. Mine. No. Ember crushed the thought, crushed the feeling, crushed the way her entire body suddenly wanted to move toward this stranger. She pressed herself harder against the wall, making herself small, making herself invisible. The man sat up slowly, every movement controlled despite the wound in his shoulder. His gaze never left hers. You saved me, he said. His voice was deep, rough from disuse and pain, and something else. Something that made Ember's skin prickle with awareness. She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Her throat had closed up entirely. The man swung his legs off the cot, and that's when Ember realized he was naked except for the bandage. She averted her eyes, heat flooding her cheeks despite the cold. How long was I unconscious, he asked. 14 hours, Ember managed. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Maybe 15. The arrow, you removed it. Yes. Silver. Yes. It should have killed me. The herbs helped, drew out some of the poison. The man was quiet for a long moment. Ember risked a glance at him and found him studying her with an intensity that made her want to crawl out of her skin. What's your name? He asked. Ember. She swallowed. Ember Ashwood. Something flashed across his face, recognition. Shock. But it was gone too quickly for her to read. Ashwood, he repeated, his voice strange. The lost bloodline. Ember's blood went cold. How did he know that name? Her mother had told her to never speak it, never claim it, never give anyone reason to connect her to the Argentum wolves who'd been hunted to extinction. I don't know what you're talking about, she lied. The man's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're a terrible liar, Ember Ashwood. He stood and Ember's breath caught again. He towered over her, all barely contained power and predatory grace. The bandage around his shoulder was already staining fresh, but he didn't seem to notice. He took a step toward her. Ember pressed herself flatter against the wall, her heart racing. Don't, she said. He stopped, tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You're afraid of me, he observed. You're naked and bleeding in my room after I saved your life. What happens now usually isn't good for people like me. People like you. Servants. Wolfless omegas. Nobodies. Something dark flickered through those gold eyes. Is that what they tell you, that you're nobody? It's what I am. No, he said, and his voice dropped to something that was almost a growl. You're the woman who dragged a 400-pound wolf through a blizzard at -45 degrees to save his life. You're the woman who removed a silver arrow with your bare hands and stitched a wound that should have required a surgeon. You're a lot of things, Ember Ashwood. But you are not nobody. Ember stared at him, unable to speak. unable to process the words or the way they settled into her chest like stones in water. The man seemed to realize he was crowding her. He stepped back, giving her space. "I need to know why," he said. "Why did you save me? You didn't know who I was. You risked your life." Why? Ember thought about lying. Thought about giving him some noble answer about duty or kindness or the inherent value of life. Instead, she told him the truth. "Because nobody's ever saved me. And I thought, maybe if I saved you, it would prove that someone could, that someone would." The silence that followed was absolute. The man looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. Then he did something Ember didn't expect. He knelt, put one knee on the floor of her shabby shack, and bowed his head, the gesture so incongruous with his size and power that Ember's mind couldn't make sense of it. "My name is Gray," he said quietly. "Gray Thornheart, Alpha King of the Northern Realm, and you, Ember Ashwood, have just changed the course of everything." Ember's world tilted. Alpha King. She'd saved the Alpha King. "I don't understand," she whispered. Gray raised his head, and the look in his eyes made her breath stop. "You're my mate," he said simply. "I felt the pine snap the moment I woke. Cedar and snow and something silver. You're mine, Ember, and I'm yours. Whether you're answered from it, you want me or not." The silver wolf in Ember's chest roared. And for the first time in 2,847 days, Ember Ashwood felt the vault door crack. Gray was still kneeling when the voices came. Loud, getting closer. Multiple people moving through the servants' quarters with purpose. "Search every room," a familiar voice commanded. "Cade Blackmore, the Alpha heir. The Alpha King's guard reported him missing after the ambush last night. If he's wounded, he might have sought shelter." Ember's eyes went wide. She looked at Gray, who had gone perfectly still. "You need to hide," she hissed. "No. They can't find you here. If they find the Alpha King in a servant's shack with me, I'm not hiding from anyone, Ember. You don't understand. They'll assume." The door slammed open. Cade Blackmore stood in the doorway, flanked by two guards. His gray eyes swept the room, landing on Gray, first naked wounded, kneeling before a servant girl, and then on Ember, pressed against the wall in her ruined dress. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, confusion, and then something dark and possessive and furious. "What," Cade said slowly, "is going on here?" Gray rose to his full height. Even wounded, even naked, he radiated authority in a way that made Cade's guards instinctively step back. "I was ambushed," Gray said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command. "6 assassins with the silver weapons. This woman saved my life." Cade's gaze slid to Ember. She saw the calculation happening behind his eyes, saw him putting pieces together in a way that would benefit him and destroy her. "Ember," he said, her name like a curse. "The wolfless Omega." "She's not," Gray started. "Your Majesty," Cade interrupted smoothly. "With all due respect, this servant has been under investigation. We have reason to believe she's involved in an attempt on Elder Corbin's life." Ember's stomach dropped. "That's a lie," she said. Cade pulled something from his pocket. Her servant's badge. "This was found at the scene. Elder Corbin was attacked in his chambers last night, throat nearly ripped out. He can't speak, but he identified his attacker." He looked at Ember, his smile cold. "You." "I was in the woods," Ember said desperately. "I was saving Convenient." Cade cut her off. "That you were conveniently absent during the attack. Conveniently found alone with the Alpha King. Tell me, Your Majesty, did she tell you she saved you? Or did you wake to find her standing over you with silver in her hands?" Gray's expression went dangerous. "Careful, Blackmore. I'm only concerned for your safety, Alpha King. This woman is dangerous. We have evidence. We have a victim. And pack law is clear. Attempted murder of an elder carries a death sentence." More guards appeared in the doorway. 5, 7, 10. Ember realized what was happening. This wasn't about Elder Corbin. This was about her, about removing a piece from the board before she could become a problem. Cade had been planning this. "She'll face trial," Gray said, his voice like iron. "But I will oversee it personally." "Of course, Your Majesty. We wouldn't have it any other way." Cade gestured to his guards. "Take her." Two guards moved toward Ember. She didn't resist as they pulled her arms behind her back, locking cold iron manacles around her wrists. The metal was laced with wolfsbane. She could smell it, feel it sapping what little strength she had left. Gray took a step forward. "Don't," Ember said quietly. "Please." He stopped, his jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jumping. Their eyes met. She saw the question there. The offer. He could stop this. One word from the Alpha King and she'd be free. But at what cost? Ember shook her head minutely. Not yet. Not like this. The guards hauled her toward the door. As she passed Cade, he leaned close enough that only she could hear. I've been waiting 8 years to see you in chains, he whispered. Tonight you'll burn, and I'll watch. They dragged her out into the morning. The last thing Ember saw before they pulled her around the corner was Gray standing in her shack, his golden eyes blazing with a fury that promised war. The Ember Moon Gala would begin in 12 hours, and Ember Ashwood's trial would begin at midnight. The holding cell beneath Black Pine Pack House was older than the territory itself. Carved directly into the mountain stone, it smelled of centuries of fierce sweat and blood, and the particular desperation that came from knowing you would die here. The walls wept moisture that never dried, creating dark stains that looked like reaching hands in the dim torchlight. Ember sat on the stone bench, her wrists still bound in iron manacles laced with wolfsbane. The poison seeped into her skin slowly, deliberately designed to weaken a shifter over hours rather than minutes. It shouldn't have affected her at all. She had no wolf to weaken. But the silver beast in her chest stirred every time the metal touched her skin, and Ember had to breathe through it, had to force calm into her racing heart. The door opened. Ember didn't look up, didn't give whoever it was the satisfaction of seeing hope die in her eyes. She'd learned that lesson young, never show them what they can take from you. Look at me, child. The voice was soft, familiar. Ember's head snapped up. Martha stood in the doorway, the old cook who'd worked at Black Pine for 30 years. Her gray hair was pulled back in its usual bun, her apron still dusted with flour from the evening's preparations. She carried a small basket covered with a cloth. Behind her, the guard shifted uncomfortably, but didn't stop her from entering. 5 minutes, he said gruffly. Alpha's orders. Martha nodded and stepped inside. The door closed, leaving them in the flickering torchlight. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Martha set the basket down and pulled Ember into a fierce hug. The old woman smelled like bread and cinnamon and safety things Ember had almost forgotten existed. I'm sorry, Martha whispered against Ember's hair. I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up. Should have said something when they dragged you out, but you have pups, Ember said quietly. A mate. If you'd spoken up, Alpha Ronin would have exiled you all. That doesn't make it right. It makes it survival. Ember pulled back, managing a small smile. I understand, Martha, I do. Martha's eyes were wet. She wiped at them roughly, then uncovered the basket. Inside was fresh bread, still warm, in a small flask. Eat, she commanded. They won't feed you before the trial. Want you weak. Ember took the bread. It had been 14 hours since she'd eaten, longer actually. She couldn't remember her last meal. The bread was soft, still steaming slightly, and when she bit into it, she had to close her eyes against the sudden sting of tears. There's something else, Martha said, her voice dropping lower. Something you need to know. Ember looked up, bread halfway to her mouth. Your mother, Martha continued. Luna Ashwood. She worked here 20 years ago before you were born. The bread turned to ash in Ember's mouth. What? She was in the kitchen, same as me. Young thing, barely 18, with silver blonde hair and eyes that changed color in the light. She never said where she came from, but I knew. We all knew. She was running from something. Ember's hands were shaking. She set the bread down carefully, afraid she'd crush it. She stayed 2 years, Martha said. Then one day she was just gone, left in the middle of the night. But before she went, she came to me, made me promise something. The old cook reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, yellowed with age, folded so many times the creases had worn thin. She said if anything ever happened to her, if I ever met a girl named Ember Ashwood, I should give you this. Martha pressed the paper into Ember's chained hands. She said to tell you the vault is not a prison. It's an armory. Martha paused, her expression darkening. There was one other thing she told me. She said there was a woman named Seraphine who'd helped hide you both when you were born. Ran an orphanage on the northern border. Your mother trusted her. Ember's breath caught. But after your parents died, Martha continued, Seraphine disappeared. Some say she joined the Order of the Pure Dawn. Some say she became their leader. The old woman's eyes searched Ember's face. I don't know if it's true, but if it is, the woman who saved you might be leading the people hunting you now. Ember stared at the paper in her hands. Her mother's handwriting faded but still legible. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. The message was short, just 3 lines. My dearest Ember, if you're reading this, I'm gone. The Order found me, but they didn't find you, which means you kept your promise. You hid. I was wrong to ask that of you. The power I told you to bury isn't a curse. It's a weapon. And weapons aren't meant to be hidden. They're meant to be used. When the time comes, and it will come, don't be afraid to open the vault. You were never meant to be a prisoner. You were meant to be a queen. All my loved mother, the paper slipped from Ember's fingers. 20 years. Her mother had written this 20 years ago knowing she would die, knowing what she was asking Ember to become. And Seraphine, the woman who'd pulled her from the flames, the woman who might now be leading the hunters. I don't understand, Ember whispered. Your mother was Argentum, Martha said gently, last of the silver bloodline, and that means you are too. I don't have a wolf, I'm broken. No, child, you're dormant. There's a difference. Martha leaned forward, her voice urgent. Your mother told me what happened the night she fled Blackpine. She was pregnant with you when the order came. They wanted to kill you both, said the bloodline had to end. But your father, Thomas Ashwood, a good man, a guardian, he got her out. They ran, lived in hiding for years. Until I was 12, Ember said numbly. Until the fire. The order found you, your parents died protecting you, and the trauma of watching them burn, it locked your wolf away. Defense mechanism. Your mind couldn't handle the power and the grief at the same time, so it chose survival. Ember looked down at her hands, the same hands that had dragged a 400-pound wolf through a blizzard, the same hands that had removed a silver arrow without flinching. Not the hands of someone broken, the hands of someone waiting. The Alpha King, Martha said, Grey Thornheart, your mother knew his family, said they were the only wolves powerful enough to stand against the order. When you saved him, she smiled, that wasn't coincidence, child. That was fate. The door opened. Time's up, the guard said. Martha stood quickly gathering the empty basket. She paused at the door looking back. Tonight, when they ask you to fight, she said quietly, don't be afraid to open the vault. Then she was gone. Ember sat alone in the cell, her mother's letter clutched in her chained hands, Martha's warning about Seraphine echoing in her mind. The silver beast in her chest stirred, and for the first time in 8 years, Ember didn't push it back down. She let it breathe. The second visitor came an hour later. This time Ember did look up when the door opened. Elder Corbin wheeled himself into the cell, his throat wrapped in fresh bandages, his weathered face pale. He was 68 years old, had served on the Blackpine Council for 40 years, and everyone in the territory respected. Everyone except Ember, because she could smell the lie. The guard closed the door, giving them privacy. Elder Corbin positioned his wheelchair facing her, his hands folded in his lap. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he reached up and unwrapped the bandages from his throat. The skin beneath was unmarked. No wounds, no scars, nothing. I'm sorry, child, he said, his voice perfectly functional. Ember said nothing, just waited. Sienna's father, Beta Marcus, he came to me 3 weeks ago, said he needed a favor, said there was a wolfless servant causing problems needed to be dealt with quietly. Elder Corbin's hands trembled. He offered me $50,000, said it was just to scare you, make you leave the territory voluntarily. I didn't know they'd make it a death trial. But you went along with it anyway, Ember said, her voice flat. I'm in debt, gambling. My daughter, she's sick, needs treatment I can't afford. Marcus said he'd pay her medical bills if I cooperated. So you let them frame me for attempted murder. I thought, he stopped, swallowed. I thought you'd just confess. Take exile. I didn't think you'd fight. Ember laughed. The sound was bitter, broken. Of course you didn't, because I'm nobody, a wolfless Omega. Why would I fight? That's not. It's exactly what you thought. Ember leaned forward, her chains rattling. Tell me something, Elder Corbin. Do you know what they're going to do to me tonight at the trial? He didn't answer. They're going to put me in the stone circle, in front of 500 witnesses. They're going to make me fight Cade Blackmore, a trained warrior who's killed 3 wolves in trials without breaking a sweat. And when he kills me, they're going to call it justice. She smiled, and there was nothing human in it. Does that seem fair to you? No, he whispered. Then why are you here? Because I saw your mother shift once, 20 years ago when she still worked in the kitchens. I was young then, just made elder. I was walking past the storage shed late one night and I heard something. Looked inside. His eyes went distant. There was a wolf in there, silver, 8 feet tall, eyes like molten gold, beautiful and terrifying. I ran, never spoke of it to anyone. He looked at Ember directly. When they brought you in, I saw your eyes. Just for a second, when the manacles touched your skin, they flashed silver. Ember's breath caught. You're Argentum, Elder Corbin said. which means if you're going to survive tonight, you need to stop hiding. Why are you telling me this? Because $50,000 isn't worth watching a child burn for crimes she didn't commit. He straightened in his wheelchair. I'm going to tell them the truth. Before the trial starts, I'm going to confess that Marcus paid me, that there was no attack, that you're innocent. They'll exile you, strip your title, maybe kill you. Probably, he smiled sadly. But I'm 68 years old. I've lived long enough as a coward. Time to die as something better. The door opened before Ember could respond. Two guards entered, not the regular Black Pine enforcers. These wore black tactical gear, moved with predatory precision. The insignia on their shoulders was a silver crown over crossed swords. Onyx Guard, the Alphaking's personal security. Elder Corbin, the lead guard said, his voice polite but cold. You're needed in the council chambers. Now. The old man looked at Ember one last time, mouthed two words, be ready. Then he wheeled himself out. The guard who remained looked at Ember. His face was impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or pity. The Alpha King requests your presence, he said formally. Ember blinked. What? He's invoking the right of consultation. As the presiding authority over your trial, he's permitted a private interview with the accused before proceedings begin. It's not a request. Two more guards entered. They unlocked her cell door, though they left the manacles on her wrists. The wolf's bane had been burning for hours now, leaving her skin blistered where the metal touched. They led her through quarters she'd never seen before, the parts of the pack house reserved for visiting dignitaries, for wolves who mattered. The walls were smooth stone instead of rough-hewn rock, torches and silver sconces instead of crude wooden holders, tapestries depicting the history of Black Pine territory, all blood and glory, and wolves running beneath full moons. They stopped at a door carved from dark wood inlaid with silver that formed the shape of a crown. The guard knocked once. Enter, came Gray's voice from within. The door opened. The room beyond was some kind of study, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk carved from a single piece of oak, windows that overlooked the mountains. A fire roared in a hearth large enough to stand in. Gray stood by the window, his back to the door. He'd changed since this morning, wore black tactical pants and a dark shirt that did nothing to hide the bandage still wrapped around his shoulder. His black hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp lines of his jaw, the brutal scar that ran from his left temple to his chin. He didn't turn around when they entered. Leave us, he said. The guards hesitated. That's an order. They left, closing the door behind them. Silence filled the room like water filling a well. Ember stood near the door, unsure if she should speak, should move, should breathe too loudly. Gray finally turned. His golden eyes found hers and held. The mate bond, which had been a constant hum since that morning, suddenly roared to life. Ember felt it like a physical force, a pull low in her belly, an ache in her chest, a need that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with something far older than thought. Mine, the silver wolf growled. Ours. Gray crossed the room in 3 strides. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin, could smell cedar and winter storms and something wild underneath. Show me, he said quietly. Show you what? Your wrists. Ember held up her chained hands, uncertain. Gray's expression went very still. Then something dark and furious moved behind his eyes. He gripped the manacles, not roughly, carefully, and examined where the wolf's bane had burned her skin. Who authorized this? His voice was soft, deadly soft. Their standard for who authorized this. Alpha Ronan, I think. Or Cade. Does it matter? Gray looked up at her, and Ember took an involuntary step back from what she saw in his face. It matters, he said, because wolf's bane is banned under continental law for use on prisoners. It's considered torture, and someone just tortured my mate. I'm not your mate. Yes, you are. I don't have a wolf. I can't be anyone's mate. You're Argentum. Your wolf is dormant, not absent. There's a difference. How do you? Because I've been searching for your bloodline for 15 years. Gray released her wrist gently, carefully, like she might break. Because the Order of the Pure Dawn killed my entire family when I was 20 years old. And the last thing my father said before they burned him alive was, find the silver wolf. She's the key to ending them. Ember stared at him. Your mother was Luna Ashwood, Gray continued, last princess of the Argentum bloodline. Your father was Thomas Ashwood, her guardian. They were assassinated by the Order when you were 12 in a cottage fire, made to look like an accident. How do you know all this? Because I've spent 15 years hunting the Order, learning their methods, tracking their kills. He pulled something from his pocket, a silver pendant on a delicate chain. The design was a crescent moon pierced by a single claw. This was recovered from your mother's body after the raid that killed her. Ember's breath stopped. She knew that pendant, had seen her mother wear it every day until— She always said it was just jewelry, Ember whispered. It's the Argentum royal seal. Your mother wasn't just a princess. She was heir to the silver throne. Gray held the pendant out to her, which makes you the last living heir. By ancient law, you outrank every alpha on this continent, including me. Ember's legs gave out. Gray caught her before she hit the floor, his arms strong and sure around her waist. He lowered her carefully to the floor, kneeling beside her. Breathe, he said quietly. Just breathe. Ember tried, failed. Tried again. I was scrubbing toilets, she managed. For 8 years, I was nobody. You were a queen in hiding. I can't be. You saved my life last night. You removed a silver arrow with your bare hands. You survived 8 years of abuse that would have broken anyone else. You're the furthest thing from nobody I've ever met. Ember looked up at him, this stranger who was supposed to be her mate, and felt something crack open in her chest. They're going to kill me tonight, she said. No, they're not. Cade challenged me to trial of Fang. I can't shift, can't fight. I'll die in the first minute. Then shift. I can't. You can. Gray reached out, cupping her face with one large hand. His touch was gentle, despite the calluses, despite the scars. The vault isn't a prison, Ember. It's an armory. Your mother was right. How did you— Martha told my guard. Who told me? He smiled slightly. You have allies you don't know about. It doesn't matter. Even if I could shift, even if I survive the trial, the order will come. They always come. Let them. Gray's voice went hard. I've been preparing for war with the order for 15 years. Let them come. We'll end them. Just like that. Just like that. Ember searched his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the trap. Found nothing but brutal honesty and a rage that matched her own. Why are you doing this? She asked. We've known each other less than a day. I know you saved my life when you had every reason to let me die. I know you counted 17 stitches in the dark because you're thorough even when you're freezing to death. I know you've survived things that should have killed you and came out kind anyway. He paused. And I know you're my mate. That's enough. The silver wolf in Ember's chest howled. I'm afraid, she whispered. Good. Fear keeps you alive. Gray stood, pulling her up with him. But don't let it keep you small. He fastened the pendant around her neck. The silver was warm against her skin, warmer than it should be, like it recognized her. Tonight, Gray said, when they put you in the stone circle, when Cade comes for you, I need you to make a choice. Die with the secret, or break the vault. If I shift, if they see what I am, then everyone will know you're Argentum. The order will mobilize. Every wolf who wants the royal bloodline dead will come for you. Your life will never be simple or safe again. And if I don't, you die, and the last Argentum dies with you, and the order wins. Ember touched the pendant at her throat, felt her mother's presence in the metal and the weight of it. You were meant to be a queen. How long do I have? She asked. Gray glanced at the window. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of blood and gold. 4 hours. They came for her at 11:45, 15 minutes before midnight, 15 minutes before the trial. The stone circle was an ancient arena carved into the cliffs behind the pack house. It had been here longer than Black Pine territory, longer than anyone could remember. The stones themselves were massive, 20 feet tall, arranged in a perfect circle, 200 feet in diameter. Runes were carved into the rock, old magic that predated written language. This was where wolves had settled disputes for thousands of years. This was where Ember would fight for her life. The guards led her through a tunnel that opened directly into the arena floor. The moment she stepped onto the packed earth, the sound hit her. 500 voices, maybe more. Every wolf in Black Pine territory had come. Alphas sat in the elevated seats carved into the cliff face. Betas filled the middle tiers. Omegas crowded the standing sections. Even the servants were here, pressed against the back wall. Everyone wanted to watch the wolfless Omega die. Torches ringed the arena, casting dancing shadows across the stones. The full moon hung overhead, fat and silver, illuminating everything with a cold light. Ember walked to the center of the circle. The guards removed her manacles. Her wrists were raw, blistered, the skin around the burns an angry red. But she could move her hands again, could feel her fingers. Small mercies. Across the arena, a door opened. Cade Blackmore stepped out. He was already shifted, a massive gray wolf, easily 400 pounds of muscle and teeth, and practiced violence. His shoulders were scarred from 12 previous trials. His eyes were flat empty of everything except the anticipation of a kill. He'd killed 3 wolves in this circle. All of them had been trained warriors. Ember was a servant who'd never thrown a punch in her life. The crowd knew it. The betting pools had closed at 200 to 1 odds that she'd survive the first minute. Alpha Ronan stood from his seat on the highest tier. His voice carried across the arena without effort, enhanced by the acoustics of the stones. Ember Ashwood, he called, you stand accused of attempted murder of Elder Corbin. The evidence against you is substantial. The victim himself has identified you. Do you have anything to say before trial of Fang begins? Ember opened her mouth. I do. The voice came from the Alpha's section. Gray Thornheart stood, and the entire arena went silent. He wore formal armor, now black and silver, the crest of the Northern Realm emblazoned on the chest. 6 of his onyx guards stood behind him, perfectly still, perfectly lethal. This trial is under my jurisdiction, Gray said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. As Alpha King, I have the right to examine evidence before execution. I invoke that right now. Alpha Ronan's face tightened. Your Majesty, the evidence is... I didn't ask for your opinion. I stated my authority. Gray's golden eyes swept the arena. Elder Corbin, stand. A commotion in the Elder section. Corbin wheeled himself forward, his bandages still wrapped around his throat. Remove the bandages, Gray commanded. Corbin hesitated, then slowly unwrapped them. The crowd gasped. His throat was unmarked. Tell them, Gray said quietly. Corbin's voice shook, but it carried. I lied. There was no attack. Beta Marcus paid me $50,000 to frame Ember Ashwood. He wanted her gone, said she was causing problems. I wrapped my own throat, faked the wounds. She never touched me. The arena erupted, shouts, accusations. Ronan surging to his feet, his face purple with rage. This is absurd, Ronan bellowed. The old man is clearly confused, coerced. Are you calling me a liar? Gray's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Are you suggesting I coerced an elder of your own pack? Silence fell. Gray descended from the Alpha section, each step deliberate, until he stood at the edge of the arena floor. By continental law, he said, a confession of false testimony voids the trial. Ember Ashwood is innocent. Release her. No. Cade's voice, still in wolf form, came out as a growl shaped into words. He prowled forward, massive and menacing. She still has to face me, he snarled. There's another charge. Another trial. Gray went very still. What charge? A blood law, mating contract. Cade shifted back to human form, unconcerned with his nakedness. He pulled a rolled parchment from a guard's hand and threw it at Gray's feet. Signed by my father, Alpha Ronan. Signed by Luna Ashwood. Witnessed by 3 elders 20 years ago. Ember Ashwood was promised to me as my mate when she came of age. Ember's world tilted. No, that couldn't be. Gray picked up the parchment. Read it. His expression never changed, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. This contract, he said slowly, claims Ember was promised at age 2. Correct. Blood law states such contracts are voidable if proven fraudulent or if the contracted party wins trial by combat against the contract holder's champion. Also correct. Awesome. Cade smiled. I choose myself as champion. Trial of Fang. If she wins, the contract is void. If she loses, his eyes raked over Ember like she was meat. She comes back to Blackpine as my mate. The crowd roared approval. Gray looked at Ember. She saw the question in his eyes. The offer. One word from him and this ended. He could claim her as his mate right now, void the contract through King's right. But that would make her his property, would take the choice from her hands, would make her exactly what she'd been for 8 years, something owned. Ember shook her head slightly. I fight. Gray's jaw clenched, but he nodded. The trial stands, he announced, under my oversight, Cade Blackmore against Ember Ashwood. Trial of Fang to yield incapacitation or death. He walked to where Ember stood, his back to the crowd. You don't have to do this, he said low enough that only she could hear. Yes, I do. He'll kill you. Maybe. Ember touched the pendant at her throat, felt its warmth. Or maybe I'll remember how to fly. Gray stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked the entire arena. He knelt, put one knee on the ground in front of a servant, in front of 500 witnesses, and bowed his head. Fight well, my queen, he said quietly. Then he stood and walked back to the Alpha section. Cade was already shifting muscles, rippling bones, cracking into new configurations. Within seconds, the massive gray wolf stood across from her lips, pulled back in a snarl. Alpha Ronan raised his hand. Begin! Cade lunged. Ember closed her eyes and opened the vault. The shift was not painful, it was liberation. 8 years of suppression, 8 years of starvation, 8 years of chains wrapped so tight around her soul that she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without permission. All of it crumbled in a single heartbeat. Ember felt her bones sing as they realigned, not breaking, not cracking, but harmonizing, finding the shape they were always meant to hold. Her skin rippled as fur erupted across her body, liquid mercury flowing over muscle and sinew. She grew up, 7 feet at the shoulder, then 8, then 9. The world tilted as her perspective changed. Everything became sharper, clearer. The torchlight was suddenly too bright, each flame a small sun. The scent of 500 wolves crashed over her like a wave. Fear, excitement, bloodlust, and underneath it all, one scent that called to her like a beacon. Cedar and winter storms and home. Her mate, Cade's charge faltered. The massive gray wolf that had been lunging for her throat skidded to a halt 10 feet away, his eyes going wide with something Ember had never seen in them before. Terror. The arena went silent. 500 wolves and not one of them breathed. Ember looked down at herself, at paws the size of dinner plates, at fur that shimmered like moonlight on water, at a body that dwarfed every wolf she'd ever seen. She was massive. She was magnificent. She was finally whole. Her eyes found Cade's, and she let him see exactly what he'd been tormenting for 8 years. Not a wolfless Omega, not a broken servant, a silver wolf, an Argentum, a queen. The aura hit the arena like a shockwave. Omegas in the standing section collapsed to their knees, unable to withstand the pressure of her presence. Betas trembled their wolves, forcing them to lower their heads in submission. Even the Alphas staggered, fighting against the primal command radiating from her very existence. Only one wolf remained standing. Gray Thornheart watched from the Alpha section, his golden eyes blazing with something that was pride and possession and fierce, violent joy. Cade tried to run. Ember didn't let him. She crossed the distance in a single bound, 40 feet of packed earth covered in less than a second. Her jaws closed around his hind leg, and she whipped her head sideways with all the strength of a body that had been caged for too long. The snap of breaking bone echoed through the stone circle. Cade's howl split the night. He tumbled across the arena floor, crashed into the stone wall with a sickening crunch. 3 ribs broke on impact, maybe 4. Ember stalked toward him, each step deliberate, unhurried. The ground cracked beneath her paws, literally cracked the packed earth, splintering under the weight of her power. A low rumble emanated from deep in her chest. Every torch in the arena extinguished simultaneously. 500 wolves flattened against the ground, instinct overriding pride, survival, overriding everything. The sound Ember made wasn't a growl. It was older than that, deeper. The sound of tectonic plates shifting. The sound of mountains being born. The sound of a goddess remembering she was divine. Cade shifted back to human form, his broken leg twisted at an unnatural angle, blood pouring between his fingers where he clutched his ribs. His face was chalk white, his eyes wide and wet with tears he couldn't stop. "Please," he whimpered. "Please, I yield. I yield." Ember loomed over him, this boy who had made her life a nightmare for 2,847 days. This boy who had kicked her, spat on her, told her she was nothing. This boy who had watched her scrub floors until her hands bled and smiled while he did it. She could kill him, should kill him by the laws of the trial. He'd come at her intending murder. She had every right. The silver wolf wanted it, wanted to close her jaws around his throat and end him, wanted to paint the arena floor with his blood and let everyone see what happened to those who tortured queens. But Ember remembered something her mother had told her in one of the last lucid moments before the flames came. Strength is knowing when to strike. Wisdom is knowing when not to. Ember opened her jaws and roared. The sound shook the mountain itself. Somewhere in the distance, an avalanche began. Small stones rained down from the cliff, face clattering against the arena floor. The full moon seemed to pulse in the sky, growing brighter, as if the moon goddess herself was watching. Cade curled into a ball, sobbing, broken in every way that mattered. Ember held the roar for 10 seconds. 15, 20, then she stopped, shifted. The transformation back was harder because the wolf fought her, wanted to stay free, wanted to run and hunt and remind the world what it meant to face an Argentum in her full power. But Ember was stronger now, not fighting the wolf, working with it. They were one. She stood naked in the center of the stone circle, her silver hair falling past her shoulders, her body marked with scars from 8 years of abuse. Steam rose from her skin in the cold night air. She looked at Cade, this pathetic creature who'd once seemed so large, so powerful. You were right about one thing, she said, her voice carrying across the silent arena. Nobody came to save me. She let a flicker of gold-silver ignite in her eyes. I saved myself. Then she turned her back on him, the ultimate dismissal, and walked toward the Alpha section where Gray stood. Someone moved. A guard. No, not a guard. Too fast. Too precise. The assassin came from the shadows behind Alpha Ronan's seat, dressed in white with a sun mask painted gold. Order of the Pure Dawn. The blade in his hand was silver curved, designed for one purpose: execution. He moved like water, like smoke, covering the distance between the Alpha section and the arena floor in 3 heartbeats. The silver blade descended toward Ember's exposed back. Gray's roar shook the arena worse than Ember's had. He vaulted over the wall, shifting mid-air, landing between Ember and the assassin in full wolf form, a massive black beast nearly as large as Ember's silver. His jaws closed around the assassin's wrist, and he whipped his head with brutal efficiency. The hand still clutching the blade flew 20 feet. The assassin screamed. Then Gray's Onyx Guard poured into the arena like a black wave. 6 warriors in tactical gear, moving with lethal precision. They surrounded Ember in a protective circle, weapons drawn. But more white-robed figures were emerging from the crowd. 5, 10, 20. They'd been hiding among the spectators, waiting for this moment, waiting for Ember to reveal herself. Ambush! Someone screamed. The arena erupted into chaos. Order warriors attacked in coordinated strikes. Silver weapons, suicide tactics, focused entirely on one target: Ember. Gray shifted back to human blood on his mouth, fury in his eyes. Get her out of here, he snarled at his guard captain. No, Ember said. That's not a request. I said no. She shifted again, faster this time, the transformation taking less than 5 seconds. The silver wolf emerged with a snarl that sent 3 order warriors stumbling backward. If they wanted her, they could have her. Just not the way they expected. Ember launched herself at the nearest attacker, a woman in white robe, sun mask covering her face, silver short sword already swinging. Ember's claws raked across the woman's chest, shredding robes and flesh. The woman went down, didn't get up. 2 more came at her from the left. Ember spun, using her tail like a club, sending one flying into the stone wall. The second got close enough to slash her flank, a burning line of silver fire. Ember yelped, then clamped her jaws around his shoulder and threw him 15 feet straight up. He came down wrong. The Onyx Guard engaged the remaining attackers with brutal efficiency. These weren't ceremonial warriors. These were Gray's personal killers, chosen for skill and ruthlessness. Within 90 seconds, half the Order warriors were down, but more kept coming. They poured through the spectator sections, throwing off cloaks and coats to reveal white robes underneath. 30, 40, this wasn't an ambush. This was an army. Ember, Gray's voice cut through the chaos. The tunnel. She saw it, the entrance she'd come through now blocked by 5 Order warriors. But beyond them, the tunnel led away, led to possible survival. Ember hesitated. Running was survival. Staying was suicide. But running meant they'd follow. Meant leading them straight to Gray's territory, to Stoneheart Fortress, to everyone who'd helped her. No, she'd spent 8 years running, 8 years hiding. She was done. Ember planted her massive paws and let the silver wolf's power flood through her completely. No holding back, no reservations. She reached deeper than she'd ever gone, past the vault, past the wolf, into the core of what she was. And she found something waiting. Not a wolf, not even a beast. A goddess. The moon goddess herself had left a piece of divinity in the Argentum bloodline, a gift from the first silver wolf who'd walked the earth 3,000 years ago. It slept in most Argentums dormant, waiting for the moment when it was needed most. Ember needed it now. She opened herself to it completely. Her eyes changed, not gold, not silver, but pure white, blazing like twin moons, like the heart of stars. Light erupted from her body. Not fire, not flame. Pure condensed moonlight, silver and terrible and beautiful. The temperature in the arena dropped 30 degrees in 3 seconds. Frost formed on the stone walls. The breath of 500 wolves turned to mist. The Order warriors closest to Ember screamed, shielding their eyes, stumbling backward. Ember raised her head and howled, and the sound carried, the goddess's voice layered, echoing infinite. The moonlight intensified. And then it moved. Silver fire erupted from Ember's body like wings unfurling, sweeping across the arena floor. In a wave of light that was somehow solid, somehow conscious, it flowed around Gray and his Onyx Guard like water around stone. It passed over the cowering spectators without touching them. But when it reached the Order warriors, it didn't pass over. It consumed. The fire burned only corruption, Only those who dedicated their lives to hunting and killing the innocent. Only those whose souls had been stained by genocide. 30 Order warriors turned to ash in 40 seconds. They didn't scream. It was too fast, too absolute. One moment they existed. The next they were silver dust blowing away on a wind that shouldn't exist in an enclosed space. The fire faded. Ember collapsed. The shift back happened involuntarily, her body unable to maintain wolf form while channeling that much power. She hit the arena floor naked, shaking every muscle, screaming. Gray was there before she finished falling, scooping her up, his coat already off and wrapped around her. His heart hammered against her cheek, his arms iron tight around her body. Don't you ever, he breathed into her hair, ever do something that stupid again. Did it work? Ember managed. You just burned 30 Order warriors to ash with goddess fire, and you're asking if it worked? Fair point. Gray carried her toward the tunnel, his guard forming a protective wall around them. The spectators parted like water, too shocked to do anything but stare. Alpha Ronan stood in his section, his face the color of old parchment. This trial is concluded, Gray announced, his voice carrying despite not shouting. By right of combat, Ember Ashwood is declared innocent of all charges. The mating contract is void. She is under the protection of the Northern Throne. Any further attempt to harm her will be considered an act of war. He paused at the tunnel entrance, turning back. And for the record, he said, his golden eyes sweeping the arena, Ember Ashwood is not just under my protection. She is my mate, my equal, and the last living heir to the Argentum throne. By ancient law, she outranks every wolf in this territory, including your Alpha. He looked at Ronan directly. Bow, he commanded. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Alpha Ronan, leader of Black Pine territory for 30 years, proud and cruel and vicious, dropped to one knee. One by one, every wolf in the arena followed. 500 wolves kneeling before a servant girl. No, before their queen. Ember woke to warmth and silence. She was in a bed, a real bed with sheets softer than water, and a mattress that felt like sleeping on clouds. A fire roared in a hearth the size of a small room. Windows taller than she was showed mountains painted in dawn light. This wasn't Black Pine. Easy, Gray's voice close by. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. Ember turned her head. He sat in a chair beside the bed, still wearing the tactical gear from the trial, though someone had cleaned the blood off. His shoulder was freshly bandaged. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. You didn't sleep, Ember said. Her voice came out raspy, raw. Couldn't. You stopped breathing twice. Healers said the goddess fire nearly killed you. But it didn't. No, you're too stubborn to die. He reached out, brushed a strand of silver hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, careful, like she might break. How do you feel? Ember took inventory. Everything hurt: muscles, bones, skin, everything. But underneath the pain was something new. Something solid. Completeness. Whole, she said. For the first time in 8 years, I feel whole. Gray's expression softened. The wolf. Not hidden anymore. Not fighting me. We're, she searched for the word, partners. Good. He stood, moving to a table where a tray waited, covered dishes, steam rising. You need to eat. Healer said you burned through 5,000 calories channeling that much power. Your body's been cannibalizing muscle mass to compensate. He brought the tray to the bed, and Ember's stomach growled at the smells. Roasted meat, fresh bread, something sweet and fruity. She ate like she was starving. Because she was. Gray watched in silence, just the barest hint of a smile playing at his lips. Where are we? Ember asked between bites. Stoneheart Fortress, my home. You're safe here. What happened after I passed out? I carried you to the helicopter. Flew here immediately. My healers have been working on you ever since. He paused. Black Pine's in chaos. Alpha Ronan tried to claim you were possessed, that what everyone saw wasn't real. Nobody believed him. Half his pack is demanding he step down. And Cade, healing slowly, his leg will never be right. Gray's smile turned sharp. He'll limp for the rest of his life. Every step will remind him what happens when you torture queens. Ember set down her fork. I'm not a queen. Yes, you are. I'm a servant with a fancy bloodline. You're the last Argentum heir. You channeled goddess fire. You made 500 wolves kneel. Gray leaned forward. Whether you claim the title or not, you're a Queen Ember. The only question is what kind of queen you'll be. Ember looked out the window at the mountains, at the vast territory spread below. Somewhere out there, the Order was regrouping. Somewhere out there, wolves were deciding if she was a threat or a savior. Somewhere out there, her mother's ghost was watching. And somewhere, a woman named Seraphine, who'd once saved Ember from flames, might be leading the hunt. I don't know how to be a queen, she admitted quietly. Neither did I when I became king at 20. I learned. Gray reached out, took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused, solid. And you won't be alone. You have me, my guard, allies in territories you don't even know about yet. Wow, Ember met his eyes. We've known each other barely 2 days. You could walk away, find another mate. Gray was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the window, and looked out at his territory. I was 20 years old when the order came, he said, his voice distant. They killed my father first. Made my mother and sister watch. Then they killed my mother, made my sister and me watch. My sister was 12. She begged them to take her instead of me. Told them she was more valuable because she was younger, could give them more information. His hands clenched on the windowsill. They burned all three anyway. I survived because my father's beta threw himself on top of me, shielded me from the flames until the guard could arrive. By the time they put the fire out, my family was ash. Ember's heart clenched. The last thing my father said, Gray continued, was, find the silver wolf. I didn't understand. Spent 15 years trying to figure out what he meant. Hunted every lead, every rumor, every whisper about Argentum survivors. He turned back to her. And then a servant girl dragged me through a blizzard to save my life. A servant girl who wasn't supposed to have the strength, wasn't supposed to have the knowledge, wasn't supposed to care enough to risk hypothermia for a stranger. Gray crossed back to the bed, knelt beside it. You asked why I'm doing this. This is why. Because you're what my father died trying to find. Because you're the weapon that can end the order. Because the moment I saw you in that shack with your hands blistered from silver and your eyes trying so hard to be empty when they were full of fire, I knew. Knew what? That I'd burn the world to keep you safe. The mate bond, which had been a steady hum since the trial, suddenly blazed. Ember felt it like a physical force, not a compulsion, not a loss of agency, but an amplification of something that was already there. The pull toward him, the rightness of his presence, the way her wolf settled when he was close. I'm terrified, she admitted. Of what? Of being someone's again, of losing myself in the bond, of becoming property instead of partner. Gray's expression went fierce. You will never be my property. I don't want a possession. I want an equal. How do I know that? Because I'm about to prove it. He stood, helped her to her feet, and led her through a door carved with silver wolves running beneath a full moon. The room beyond was a throne room smaller than Black Pine's, but infinitely more elegant. Black stone walls, silver veins running through them like frozen lightning. A massive fireplace. And at the far end, on a raised dais, 2 thrones, identical in size, identical in design, side by side, not one in front of the other. This is the throne room of the Northern Realm, Gray said. For 200 years, there's been only one throne. I had the second one made yesterday. Ember stared at him. I felt the bond snap the moment I woke in your shack, he continued. I knew who you were before you told me your name. I don't want a queen consort, Ember. I want a co-ruler. Equal authority, equal voice, equal throne. Tears stung her eyes. And if I say no, if I'm not ready, then the second throne stays empty until you are. Gray cupped her face in both hands. I will wait. I will give you time, space, whatever you need. But I won't lie to you about what I want. What do you want? You as my mate, as my queen, as my partner in ending the order and rebuilding a world where silver wolves don't have to hide. His thumbs brushed away the tears on her cheeks. I want you, Ember Ashwood. The broken parts and the powerful parts and everything in between. Ember looked at the 2 thrones, looked at this king who'd known her less than 3 days and was offering her the world. She thought about her mother who'd spent 20 years running, who'd died to keep her safe, who'd left a message saying she was meant to be a queen. She thought about 8 years of scrubbing floors and hiding the best parts of herself because the world told her she was nothing. She thought about the silver wolf in her chest, finally free, finally whole, finally ready to run. I'm not ready, she said. Gray's expression didn't change. I know, but I want to be someday. Then someday it is. And until then, you're under my protection. You train, you learn politics. You figure out who Ember Ashwood is when she's not surviving. He smiled, and I will be patient, irritatingly, frustratingly patient. Ember laughed. The sound surprised her, genuine, unforced, the first real laugh in years. Okay, she said. Okay. Teach me. Help me become someone who deserves that second throne. Gray pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. You already deserve it, he murmured. but I'll help you see that. They stood there, two broken people holding each other in a throne room with two chairs, and for the first time since her mother died, Ember Ashwood felt something she thought was lost forever. Hope. 3 days later, a messenger arrived at Stoneheart's gates. Order forces were gathering at the northern border. 300 warriors. They were preparing for an assault. Estimated time 3 days. The War Council convened within the hour. Ember sat at Gray's left, the position of equal authority, surrounded by representatives from 6 territories. Some looked at her with awe, some with fear, all with respect. "They're coming for me," Ember said quietly, breaking the tense silence. "If I leave, go into hiding. They'll hunt you forever," Gray interrupted. "And everyone who helped you. No, we end this, now." What the Alpha Marcus of Riverside Territory, a grizzled wolf in his 60s, leaned forward. "You're asking us to commit troops to a war against an organization that's been hunting for 300 years. "I'm asking you to stand against genocide," Ember said. She stood addressing the room. "For 8 years I was powerless. I know what it feels like to have no voice, no choice, no ability to defend myself." She touched the pendant at her throat. "I don't want power so I can rule. I want it so I can protect. So no one else has to hide what they are just to survive." Marcus studied her. "And if we refuse, then I'll fight them alone," Ember said simply. "Because they're coming whether you help or not." The room went silent. Then Marcus nodded. "Riverside stands with Stoneheart. 500 warriors." One by one, the other territories pledged support. By the time the council adjourned, they had 2,000 warriors committed to the war. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. The night before battle, Ember dreamed of fire. She was 12 again, watching her parents burn. But this time she saw the face of the woman who'd pulled her from the flames. Silver hair, kind eyes, a sun-marked pendant around her neck. "Run, little one," the woman had whispered. "I'll keep you safe." Ember woke gasping. She knew that face. Mother Seraphine, the woman who'd saved her. The woman who, if Martha's warning was true, now led the order hunting her. 3 days later, the order came. They came at dawn, 300 warriors in white robes with sun masks painted gold. They came with silver weapons and fire magic and centuries of practice hunting the unhuntable. They came to kill the last Argentum. They found an army waiting, 2,000 wolves from 6 territories arranged in defensive formations, armed with steel and strategy and absolute fury. At their head, standing on the fortress wall, a silver-haired queen who'd spent 8 years learning to hide and 3 days learning to fight. Ember Ashwood looked down at the order forces and smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You should have left me in the kitchen," she said, her voice carrying across the battlefield with unnatural clarity. "You should have let me scrub floors and live my small, invisible life." She shifted the transformation, taking 3 seconds, the massive silver wolf appearing where the small woman had stood. "But you didn't, and now you're going to learn what happens when you wake a sleeping goddess." She threw back her head and howled. 2,000 wolves howled with her. The battle began. The fighting raged for 3 days. On the dawn of the 4th day, Ember stood on the fortress wall, surveying the carnage below. 200 Order warriors lay dead. Her alliance had lost 300 wolves, but the Order kept coming. And at their head, on a white horse, sat a woman Ember recognized. Silver hair, sun mask. But when she removed it, the face beneath was kind, weathered, sad. Mother Seraphine. "I knew you'd remember me," Seraphine called across the battlefield. Her voice carried, enhanced by magic. "The girl I pulled from the fire. The girl I loved like a daughter." Ember shifted, the silver wolf appearing on the ramparts. Her voice, when it came, was layered with divine power. "Then why are you trying to kill me?" "Because I love you enough to save the world from you." Seraphine dismounted, walked forward alone, unarmed. "The prophecy says an Argentum will burn the world clean. Remake it in silver fire. I've seen what that means, Ember. I've read the histories. 10,000 wolves dead, packs destroyed, families torn apart. That was Morrigan 400 years ago. I'm not her. Not yet." Seraphine stopped 50 yards from the wall. "But goddess fire corrupts. The more you use it, the more it burns. Eventually, you won't be able to tell innocent from guilty. You'll burn everything." Ember felt Gray's presence beside her, his black wolf matching her silver. "She's lying," he said low enough only Ember could hear, "trying to justify genocide." But Ember saw something in Seraphine's eyes. Not malice, fear. "I don't want to kill you," Ember said. "I just want to be left alone." "I know, child, I know." Seraphine's smile was broken. "That's why I have to stop you, before you become what you're destined to be." She raised her hand. 50 Order warriors stepped forward, silver arrows knocked. Fire. The arrows flew. Ember didn't move. The silver fire erupted from her body, forming a shield that vaporized the arrows mid-flight. But this time she controlled it, shaped it, made it precise. The fire swept across the battlefield, not burning, not destroying, illuminating. Every Order warrior whose soul was stained with innocent blood began to glow silver. 30 of them, out of 200. The rest remained dark. You see, Ember's voice echoed, your order isn't pure. 30 of your warriors are murderers. The rest are just soldiers following orders. I can tell the difference. She let the fire fade. I'm not Morrigan. I don't burn the innocent. I burn the corrupt. And if you keep coming for me, Mother Seraphine, you'll find out which one you are. Seraphine stared at the glowing warriors, her face ashen. I can see souls. Ember shifted back to human, standing naked and unashamed on the wall. Gray immediately draped his coat over her shoulders. The goddess gave me her eyes. And what I see in you, Mother, isn't evil. She met the old woman's gaze. It's fear and grief, and love twisted into something poisonous. You're not protecting the world from me. You're punishing yourself for failing to protect my mother. Seraphine collapsed to her knees. I couldn't save Luna, she whispered. I tried. They found her anyway, and I thought, if I joined them, if I led them, I could control who they hunted, could protect the innocent ones. There are no innocent Argentums to the Order, Ember said gently. We all burn the same. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then Seraphine removed the sun mask and threw it into the mud. I surrender, do what you will. Ember looked at Gray. He nodded. Life imprisonment, Ember pronounced. You'll write the name of every Argentum child the Order killed, all 247 of them. Their names, their ages, how they died, every day for the rest of your life. Seraphine looked up, tears streaming. Thank you. The Order broke. Without their leader, the warriors fled. Some surrendered. Most ran. The war was over. 6 months later, Ember Ashwood married Gray Thornheart in a ceremony that brought together every territory on the continent. She wore silver and white. He wore black. Their crowns were identical. When they kissed, 2,000 wolves howled their approval. And in a cell beneath Stoneheart, Mother Seraphine wrote her 47th name, tears falling on the parchment. On the 60th day after the wedding, Ember walked into the throne room and sat in the second throne for the first time. Gray was already there reviewing reports. He looked up when she entered, saw where she sat. Something blazed in his golden eyes. Ready? He asked. No, Ember said honestly, but I'm tired of waiting to be ready. Sometimes you just have to jump. Gray set aside his reports and moved to his own throne. They sat side by side, equal height, equal power. How does it feel? Gray asked quietly. Ember considered. The throne was comfortable but firm. She could see the entire room from here, could make eye contact with anyone who entered, could be seen. Terrifying, she admitted. And right. Gray's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. Welcome home, my queen. They ruled together as equals for 50 years. In the servant quarters of Black Pine Territory, now under new leadership after Alpha Ronan's abdication, Sienna Vale scrubbed floors for the 15th year of her sentence. When she was released at age 37, she traveled to Stoneheart and requested an audience with the Silver Queen. Ember granted it. I'm sorry, Sienna said, kneeling, for everything. I was cruel because I was taught that weakness deserved cruelty. You taught me I was wrong. Ember helped her stand. There's a place for you here, if you want it. Sienna did. Kate Blackmore died of exposure in the Arctic territories alone and unremembered 3 years after the war. And Ember Ashwood's servant Orphan Queen never forgot what it meant to be powerless. Because the best rulers are the ones who remember what it's like to have no power at all. Redemption, she learned, wasn't about forgiveness. It was about remembering. And neither she nor Seraphine nor Sienna would ever forget what it cost to be powerless or powerful.